Hey guys, I'm Heidi Prieb. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. This week on this channel, we are talking about nervous system regulation. And today in particular, we're going to be doing a deep dive on burnout. Now, this is a video I've been wanting to make for years because for a lot of my own life, I struggled really intently with burnout, but I couldn't figure out why that was happening. So like most people for most of my life, I had this idea that the only way a person could burn out was if they were constantly doing stuff and getting stuff accomplished. And a reframe that really helped me in this department, which we're going to go into today, is that burnout is not always about how much we are doing or what we're doing. Burnout is largely a product of how our nervous system is responding to what we're doing. And the more that we are resisting our experiences, the faster we are going to burn out, even in the scenarios where we are not physically doing that much. And so a big aha moment around this for me came a couple of years ago when I was talking to a friend who was feeling really burnt out at their job. And they were saying, it takes so much out of me every single day to get up and go to work in the morning. And I cannot imagine how my coworkers are doing the same thing, but waking up 3 hours earlier every day because they have kids and they need to get those kids fed and clothed and off to daycare or school or whatever it is. And then they come in and put in the same 8 to 10 hour workday as me every day. How are they managing all of that when I am as burnt out as I am? And we kind of sat with that question for a bit and then had this really cool mutual aha moment where we realized that actually the fact that their coworkers had families that they were doing this for might actually be a key reason why they were not burning out as fast. Because that gave their job a clearer sense of purpose. Feeling like they were going in every single morning so that they could put food on their children's plate in the evening gave the job a very different meaning than it did for someone who did not feel like there was any clear purpose as to why they were working that hard, which was in some ways my friend's situation. They could have just as easily been working a job that paid a little bit less, but that gave them a lot more fulfillment. And so we realized together that a big part of burnout is not about what we are doing, but it's about our relationship to why we are doing it. So a good example of this, when I was in my teen years, I was so determined to get out of my hometown and to gain financial independence. That was a humongous driving goal for me. And so I took on menial job after menial job. At some points, I was working 3 or 4 jobs at a time in my late teen years and early 20s. But I felt really energized at those jobs because I saw them as my ticket to freedom and independence. So I had a very clear purpose behind them. But flash forward several years. When I was in my mid-20s, I was working less than I ever had in terms of hours and earning more money than I ever had. And yet, I hit the biggest burnout point that I'd ever experienced. So at this point, I was working as a ghostwriter. So I was working with a whole bunch of authors and entrepreneurs, and I was traveling to conferences with them and listening to their speeches and helping them tighten their messages up. And for a long time, I'd really enjoyed that work. But I noticed as my career progressed that a couple of things started happening. One, I started feeling really out of place at the conferences and events that I was going to. Because as I got better and better at my work, I also started working with people who were in higher and higher income brackets. And I felt really uncomfortable and out of place in a lot of the environments that I ended up in. And so I felt like I was constantly having to kind of mask who I actually was and show up with a fake personality. And even though I wasn't clocking that many hours at the job, I was spending a lot of time thinking about how I was going to present myself in the most perfectly inauthentic way in order to keep my career going. And two, I found that the more I spent time working for other people and helping them hone their messages, the more I started wanting to do my own thing. I wanted to be writing in my own name. I wanted to be the face behind my own work. And so this job that I had once been so excited to have, because there is a clear sense of purpose behind it for me, it was giving me more of that independence and that freedom that I craved. Once I'd achieved enough independence and freedom to be reasonably happy with what I was doing, new needs started coming online. And now it was feeling more important to me to feel like what I was doing was authentic and aligned with my true personality. And so I was hitting burnout points not because I was doing too much. Again, I'd gone from working 3 or 4 part-time jobs while going to school full-time to working 1 part-time job and traveling with most of my spare time. And yet I was feeling more exhausted and depleted than I had ever felt, because the work that I was doing had started to feel high effort, low meaning, which is the recipe for getting burnt out. Now, what I want to get clear on here is that, of course, we all have physical limitations. So it's not that you can't get burnt out by simply doing too much stuff. That happens all the time. But I just want to draw our attention to the fact that that's not the only way to get burnt out. It's just the most commonly talked about way to burn out. But the other way to burn out is to consistently expect things of ourselves that our nervous systems feel resistant to. And so at this point in my life, if I feel like I'm heading down the path towards burnout, there are a couple of questions that I like to ask myself to get realigned with what meaning I'm making out of what I'm doing. So the first question I like to ask myself when I'm feeling like my energy is getting frayed is, did I choose this goal that I'm pursuing? Whether that is a professional goal, whether that is a relationship that I'm in, whatever it is that I'm gunning towards, did I choose this with my body or my mind? So, what do I mean by that? Essentially, when we choose something with our mind, it means that we are looking at the outcome we want, but not being super attuned to what it is going to require of our bodies and our nervous systems to get there. So let's say I just want to be rich and famous. That is my only goal. And I decide using my mind that probably the quickest way to get rich and famous is to become an actress. But maybe I don't actually like acting that much. And so I might be consistently moving towards this goal that I actually just do not enjoy the process of pursuing. And the mistake that we often make when we set goals like this is we assume that we're just going to have to get through a certain period of doing things in this way that we don't like, and then once we achieve fame and fortune, of course, we'll just be happy forever. But in reality, the cost of getting something is identical to the cost of keeping it, which is why we have to be really careful when we're goal setting about making sure that we don't only want the end result, we also feel aligned with the process of what it is going to take to get us there. So the surest way to make sure that a goal is going to be sustainable and that we're not going to burn out either en route to it or once we achieve it is checking with ourselves as to whether or not we're actually going to enjoy the process of moving towards that goal on a day-to-day basis. So if you want to be rich and famous, what do you genuinely enjoy doing so much that you're willing to just keep persisting at it over and over and over again until you achieve what you want out of it? Which things do you like doing even on the bad days, even on the hard days? What feels intrinsically rewarding? That is what it means to set goals from a body-based state. And when we set goals from a body-based state, it means that we're taking the whole of ourselves with us en route to those goals, which means that the likelihood we're going to burn out is much, much less, because our nervous systems are not going to be resisting what we are doing in terms of process in order to get to the end result that we want. The second question I like to ask myself if I feel like I'm heading towards a burnout point is, and we just touched on this, do I feel like I am being my whole self in the pursuit of this thing? And the important thing to pay attention to here is that who we are changes. So something that I've had to confront over and over again in my life is that I've gone into one career or one relationship of some sort, feeling like I'm being totally authentic and expressing myself in the most clean and direct way possible. And then as life goes on, my circumstances change, and I change with my circumstances. But if I'm still approaching my work or my relationships using the approach that worked for a different version of me, I'm going to start experiencing resistance to my own approach. Because even though it may have worked really well for a really long time, it's just no longer working for me in the same way. And so what I need to do is update my approach to the rest of my life to reflect the changes that have happened inside of me between the time when I first chose those things and where I'm at now. Feeling like we have to hide major parts of who we are or what matters to us in order to do something is one of the fastest recipes for burnout out there. Because what our nervous systems crave more than almost anything else is alignment. So the way that we are feeling inside, being congruent with how we are expressing ourselves in the world. The closer we get to that alignment, the better an experience our nervous system has of being us. And so this is one of the key things you want to look at. If you feel like you're gunning down that path for burnout, how do I bring more of myself into what I'm doing, if I'm sure that it's what I want to be doing? And if the path I'm on requires me to very frequently abandon parts of myself that matter to me, is it possible that I need to reevaluate that path? The third question I like to check in with myself on if I feel like I'm getting burnt out is the question, what else might be needing my attention right now? So sometimes, even if all the conditions that we just talked about are met, even if we have a strong sense of meaning behind what we're doing, a really strong and aligned why, and even if we feel like we are bringing our full selves to the table and we are not holding back who we are in the pursuit of that thing, every once in a while, we find something that we love doing so much that the other areas of our lives start to struggle out of us neglecting them. And if this is the case, it does not matter how much we love doing that one thing. Our bodies are eventually going to start tugging on our sleeves, demanding some attention in the other areas. So personally, I love doing creative projects. It is the joy of my life to be working on a new YouTube series or a new book, but sometimes I can get so engrossed with whatever I'm working on that I start to neglect my health or my relationships. And then suddenly I'll be feeling drained and I won't be able to pinpoint why, because the work that I'm doing that I love so much might be going super well. But if I am neglecting the other areas of my life that keep me whole and balanced in the pursuit of one area that I really love, I am nonetheless going to hit my own natural limits. I am going to need to stop and pay more attention to what it is that keeps me stable and regulated enough to do that work in the first place. And so this is something we especially want to check in on if we have recently made room in our lives for something new. So if we have recently welcomed in a new relationship or a new project or a new job, those things have real demands on our time and our energy. And if we are meeting those demands at the expense of things like spending the amount of time we normally spend with our family and friends, or cooking homemade meals and getting exercise and getting enough sleep at night, it might be that we're starting to feel resistance to this thing that we know we love, not because it's wrong for us, but because there are other things that need our attention more. And so the point of all of this is the simple idea that our nervous systems have wisdom to them. And when we are burning out, if we have a resistant relationship to our own burnout, it is the fastest way to burn out even harder and for even longer. The way to reverse this trend is to assume that there is deep signal in the part of ourselves that is feeling that burnout and that is asking us to stop. Brianna Wiest, who is a brilliant author, has a quote in one of her books that goes, "The universe whispers until it screams." And the same thing is true of our bodies and our nervous systems. If we are neglecting our needs for either practical things like rest and replenishment, or mental things like stimulation or time to let our thoughts and our mind wander freely, or social things like being close to our family and friends. Whatever it is, if we are neglecting those parts of ourselves for long enough, they will whisper at us. We will start getting signs that maybe we need to be paying attention to those parts. And if we keep hitting override and keep doubling down on whatever it is that we have decided with our minds we should be doing, eventually those parts are going to come out screaming. And this is ironically how we end up in the absolute worst burnout loops. Because let's say I really just need rest and time to let my mind wander and be unencumbered with stressful thoughts. And I just keep hitting override on that thought and shaming myself for having it while trying to double down on whatever work I'm trying to get done. Now I have not only the stress of persisting with my work on my nervous system, I also have the added stress of shaming myself for having perfectly normal needs. Something I really had to learn the hard way as someone who is self-employed is that a day off of work where I spend the whole day thinking about work is not a day off work. It's only a day off work if I truly put no expectation on myself to get anything done or to even think about getting anything done. Because now I'm giving my nervous system the day off, as well as my body. I need to take time off from those thoughts that are telling me, get stuff done, think about this, work on this. If I'm engrossed in those thoughts, even if I'm not physically doing anything about it, I'm putting my nervous system in a stressed out state that is going to lead to burnout down the line. So, what we want to keep in mind here is that burnout is not just about what we are doing, it's about what thoughts we are having about what we're doing and how our nervous system is responding to those thoughts. And to counteract this, we have to believe that there is a wisdom to the parts of ourselves that are telling us to stop, pause, take a break, and let the nervous system lead for a little while. Even though in the short term, it might lead to things like decreased productivity, in the long run, it's going to help us stay aligned enough with what we are doing and the direction we are moving in with our lives that it is going to make those short-term stopping points seem really valuable in retrospect. All right, that's all I'm going to say on this topic for today. But as usual, any thoughts, questions, comments that you have coming up as you went through this video, please leave them in the comment section below. I love you guys. I hope you're taking care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you back here again really soon.